the money would never actually bring me the joy that I was able to receive from giving back and helping my own people. And maybe it was a spiritual thing for me when I realized, like, I am given the opportunity to be here because I am called to do something bigger than what I'm doing right now. And it was actually during that pivotal, that moment where I realized that, there is more to this. And, what can I do, for my people?
Hello and welcome to Food and Beverage Therapy Podcast, where we talk about leadership, entrepreneurship, and innovation in the coffee world. Learn from experts, CEOs, and leaders in the coffee industry on how they challenge themselves, continue to grow, innovate, and reinvent the landscape that makes up the business I love, coffee. I'm Jake Leonti, your host. I'm the cafe guru at F&B Therapy, editor-in-chief at Coffee Talk magazine, consultant, and entrepreneur, and I've worked at every link of the value chain over a 20-year career. I'm joined by my co-host, Andy Trindle-Mersch, another coffee expert with over 20 years in the business, and current VP of Coffee Operations and Sustainability at Philz Coffee, as well as the board member at the Coalition for Racial Equity.
How are you? It's busy times. It is busy times.
It is busy times. Wonderful to see you as always, of course, Andy.
Thank you, Jake. Nice to see you as well.
Thank you. I had an amazing conversation with Jeanine from JNP Coffee. One of the things that I thought was really important, kind of as a takeaway, was just the importance of female leadership within the industry. And not only her, of course, who's like kind of a role model, I think, for female leaders in the industry, but even down at the farm level and people working in that capacity, as well as, she also works with Women in Coffee and some other organizations as well. And of course, you obviously are a prominent woman in leadership in the industry. So I'd love to hear kind of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So Jeanine is very impressive to me, by the way. I believe I've met her in person once. I've definitely had contact with her through her trying to reach out to Philz and sell coffee. And unfortunately, the way we buy and use coffees, it has not yet been a good fit, but I just want to say that she's a super impressive woman to me in coffee, and partly because she just created sort of a very clear business plan, went out and approached people, was very consistent with her plan, and just went out to get business. She's also in this great position between farmer and importer and roasters, and she really works that entire chain of influence.
She's been doing an amazing job, and the company has just grown exponentially, and now they're even providing coffee for Peet's Coffee as well, which I know is kind of a big deal. And the whole ethos behind the company is really special and involves personal relationships at origin, and then the importing, and then they have just created a great cast of clients here in the US. And I found her story really inspiring just because she's just worked so hard to get where she is and then transition out of a completely different industry into the coffee industry and then make a success of that.
Can you remind me where she transitioned from? I'm very curious about that.
She was working in marketing. But she was working in marketing and in Canada as well as in Europe. And so she's like, got international experience. She speaks French. And she would tell me, became very successful. And one day was just, well, I don't want to spoil it, but
don't.
But basically decided to make the transition to coffee out of like conscious and wanting to give back something to her home in Burundi. And so I thought that was really special because I wish that more of us could be led by our conscious and do something like that. So again,
100% agreed. Yeah, and to take like knowledge and skills and then specifically bring it back to where you came from and try to elevate and support and represent is really impressive. I love that.
Absolutely. And she works with the IWCA and, is prominent in that area as well. And which I think is very important because she's obviously is kind of a role model within the industry for female leadership.
Absolutely.
As I believe you are, so.
Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I was an early big participant in the IWCA, and I'm a huge, very supporter of what they do and the work that they do to try to lead women in coffee. I'm not currently, that is not the mission or that I am focused on, though I do believe in the Women for Mission, but I have kind of pivoted where I spend some of my time to promote issues in the industry.
That's excellent. Well, you contributed to that, and but you just still live on by your existence, right? I mean,
don't we all? Yeah. Some days it's a good existence, some days not so much, but yes.
Well, I know we were talking about, especially in like on the production side of things, there is a huge inequity when it comes to women in roles in production, especially like roasters. I know that there's like, maybe it's only like 20% of the roasters in the US are women. This is something Equator Coffee talks about a lot. And you're on the production side somewhat. I know it's like you're leading, but that's part of what you're in charge of, correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So coffee operations at Phil's falls under my scope, and that includes on the sourcing quality side, but also our roasting plants. So yes, and we do have a female roaster on our roasting team, which is pretty awesome. She's great. Her name is Brandy, and she came in actually as a baker with a baking background, but had interest in coffee. And so she's been training and kind of elevating herself up on our roasting team.
Very cool. I've always, side note is that I've always found that bakers who are interested in coffee actually are a good fit for roasting.
So is it common? It kind of didn't surprise me, but it is a common journey you've seen?
I haven't seen a lot, but I've met other bakers, and I get it because they're well suited because one, they already have a good palate. They're used to tasting things and being in food.
Smelling and watching and making decisions. Yeah.
And repetition. Baking is so repetitive, and so is roasting. And so they're okay with that. And then being able to bring in like the slight tweaks and observing, it's like, there's a lot of correlation between baking and roasting that I found to be successful for them.
Yeah, as long as they don't bake the coffee, it's great.
Let's just learn this. There's this one difference, okay?
Yeah, just don't bake it.
It's not supposed to be one temperature the whole time.
Right, exactly.
That's great, though. And have you found that there's been, did you have any struggles, I guess, when you were coming up the ranks in coffee, or did you see that as being a barrier to entry in the coffee industry?
By being a woman, I didn't. And that's what's interesting, that I had gotten involved in the International Women's Coffee Alliance, which was really exciting to me. And I was invited by some women in the industry that I respect and admire a lot. So I would say they were my kind of mentors in what it was. But I followed them because I was inspired by them, less so than I felt I needed or was lacking opportunity, if that makes sense. So I feel like I was probably very privileged because of growing up in America and being white. I feel like I have a privilege that being a woman didn't feel like it was holding me back. It may have, and maybe I didn't even recognize it, but I didn't feel that way. I was very fortunate. I wasn't denied, jobs that I applied for. I didn't get a lack of opportunity that I ever felt was based strictly on being a woman. That's how I sort of grew up. And I grew up with a father that just sort of didn't treat me to feel differently about being a woman, just like I was just a person going out there to do my job, ask for what I wanted, learn how to do things that I didn't know how to do that would be advantageous for me to know how to do for myself, just simple stuff like change a tire or tune my car, right? So I just grew up in a way that I didn't know if I lacked privilege. So I just kept going. I just took the opportunities I wanted to take. I raised my hand. I certainly got bad times, but most of the time they didn't feel like they were based on my being a woman. They were based on human interactions, is just how I viewed them. Some people were jerks. Some people were not jerks. Some people just didn't tell you what was going on in their brain, so you couldn't understand what wasn't working. So that's how I felt. And I know that's not true for a lot of women. So I think I love women like Jeanine who continue to help push the boundary and represent women in coffee, because I 100% know that is not true, especially as you go, to other parts of the coffee supply chain. I think women do need a lot more representation and a lot more support. But I personally cannot say that I ever felt lesser or that anyone made me feel lesser because of being a woman.
That's great. And I think that
Lucky.
it's lucky, and part of it I think is probably your father doing a good job, like raising you to feel empowered and, not to feel, like you said, lesser or different.
Yeah.
So I think that's really special. It's great.
Yeah.
And look, the success speaks for itself. So that's the good news.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is, so while I don't focus particularly, and certainly didn't coming up in coffee, I didn't focus on, being a woman and if that was creating obstacles. As I've learned and tried to understand that the things I experience is not what everyone's experience, I do pay more attention, and I recognize that even in the US and even, more privileged women, there are issues out there in the world. So I do want women to be better represented in the boardroom, better represented in the coffee roasting, room, if that's where they want to be, better represented, on the farms, at the co-ops, in the management level, everything that they want, I want for them. And I know there's still a lot of work to be done to get there. And I do belong to a women's executive group that is focused on providing a place for women to grow their career, network. So I have a privilege and an opportunity to do that. I feel like in some ways that is for me less about because I have hurdles in front of me that I'm trying to address, other than just, kind of collaborating with other women who have children and jobs. And, it's almost more of a networking and engagement with peers.
Which is great. I think that's always a great idea. And I'm always looking for other ways to, build community and interact and see how we can sort of help each other strive forward. I think that's important, not just for women, but in general, especially in the coffee industry, because I think the coffee industry in general has been shrouded in an amount of secrecy for centuries. And
do you mean like the cost of coffee and the supply chain transparency? Is that what you mean? Or okay.
I think the whole industry, for the majority of the time it's existed, has been very quiet and insular, and it's only really been in the last 20, 30 years where transparency and the conversation and the internet have opened up so much. Because even, it was always, even about a roast, it was like a roast profile was like somebody's special sauce that couldn't be shared with anyone.
Right.
And, the more time you spend in coffee, the more you realize it's not a magic trick. You can probably figure it out.
Correct. Just like with blend recipes or secrecy, honestly, we used to have a very extreme blend secrecy recipe at Phil's, which is, I understand where that came from. It came from protecting the really heartfelt approach that Phil put into creating all the blends. But at the same time, I was always like, put someone in a room for a week, and if they really want to recreate our blends to taste the same, not necessarily to have the exact same formula,
right,
but to taste the same, it can be done.
It can be done. Absolutely.
It can be done. Yeah.
With or without the information.
Correct.
And, and so then learning the skills within the coffee industry was also shrouded and very difficult. And, even when I was starting out in the late 90s, early 2000s, there was no information on the internet, and there were no classes where I was. So it was, I don't know exactly where I was going with this, but it has been.
Well, it pivots a little bit to another topic, but the Specialty Coffee Association and kind of the formation of that group, which became a large educational group, but it was really about bringing specialty coffee professionals together to align on a mission and vision to elevate specialty coffee, so that there was sort of this universal goal that people wanted to work towards to elevate the value of our product. So I think that was really important. And then the Specialty Coffee Association formed as that. And as part of that, over the years, and I was very fortunate to be able to be involved on a lot of the training and education side of the SCA for a number of years, the organization really worked to start creating that opportunity. So people could go somewhere to learn something about coffee, which prior, nobody was talking about anything. But I think that opened up waves of transparency, right? Because you started talking about how to make a great espresso shot. It wasn't the magic of, the machine or the beans. It was like, no, it actually takes a great barista who knows what they need to get what greatness they need in the beans. They know what greatness they need in the machine. They know all these things. And it's not a mystery. It's just takes a lot of work, a lot of dedication and craft and commitment.
Exactly. Yeah. And that light didn't really get shed until, like we're saying, like in the 90s and early 2000s, so there were centuries of coffee before that.
I know. And what's so interesting is because I joined coffee really full-time in 1994, and I'd already done some barista work prior to that. But because I joined right when that was happening, I think I didn't realize how young it was. So I really grew up right in that time, and I just sort of thought that was it. I didn't realize it was really formational for the industry at the time.
And you grew up on the West Coast, which, if things were happening sooner there than they were on the East Coast as well, like decades sooner. So
right, for sure. Yeah. And people were talking already about farmer value. And I heard all of that really young in my career. So I assumed this had all been talked about much, much earlier.
Yeah.
And obviously I have since learned that's not true.
This is why we have these conversations, so we can get to the root of our history. Realize,
gosh, I knew so little back then. Yeah.
Well, this is great. I'm excited to share with you what Jeanine and I talked about, and I'll try not to make any more spoilers. So let's take a listen. Hello and welcome to Food and Beverage Therapy Podcast. I'm joined today with my very special guest, Jeanine Niyonzima-Aroian of JNP Coffee. Jeanine is the founder of JNP Coffee, which was started in 2012. Welcome, Jeanine.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here, Jake.
So good to see you. We've known each other for years, but we've only really gotten to talk a handful of times, So I'm really excited to take the time with you and get to know you on another level. So thanks again for coming.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I should also tell you that I have been drinking your coffee all week, and it's delicious. I got this at the SCA show, and I've been really enjoying it. So thanks for that.
Wonderful. It looks like you're ready for a refill, though.
I am ready for a refill. It is this morning was my last cup, so I'm like, I got to get some more.
Right. I'll let you to get the next one.
Done. So, there's a number of things that I don't know, and I would love to go over with you. First of all, what's kind of like your, you grew up in Burundi, but what was your first coffee memory or experience?
So I grew up in Burundi. Actually, I was born and raised in Burundi, and spent all my, childhood life in Burundi until I came to the U.S. actually to go to college. And my first memory of coffee. Actually, my mom used to drink coffee when I was growing up in Burundi. And the first memory is just the beautiful smell of coffee. And I always wonder, wow, what does it smell just so good? Just the perfume that comes out of Burundi coffee was just something that always intrigued me, but I was never exposed to it because I grew up drinking tea. So that's, every morning before going to school, we always have, a piece of bread and tea. Then you're ready to go.
So you were more in a tea drinking household, but you said your mother would prepare coffee as well?
That is correct. My mom would prepare coffee and mainly actually on the weekends. I don't know why. And I just remember just this memory of just having just this very intriguing, just beautiful smell of a drink that was it was only an adult drink. That was coffee in my household, and that my mom would prepare, and just the smell of it just was always just intriguing and delicious in my mind, but just never had a chance to drink it at that time.
And would your mom actually roast it, or was there a local roaster that you'd pick it up from?
Yes, that was actually local roasted. Yeah, we did not, we don't have the beauty of roasting our own coffee in Burundi, although they could, but they had a local roaster that will roast the coffee, and I think that's where she would get the coffee from.
Very nice. And, I've read through your bio, of course, and as I see it, you were cultivating coffee to pay for school. So does that mean were you actually working on farms, or were you at the processing level, or how did that work?
So it's actually my mother who grew up on a farm. My grandfather is the one that actually grew coffee. He had a number of trees, kind of like most of the Burundian farmers in Burundi. Most of them actually have just a handful of trees that most people don't even know, among other plantations that they have that they plant, for surviving purposes. But coffee is something that almost everybody, especially in the region where my mother was from. My mom was from the northern part of the country in Gozi. So they, my grandpa and my grandfather would grow coffee, and then during the summertime, actually, I have this memory. When I would go to visit, there is an area where there was just beautiful greenish trees with some beautiful cherries, and they say this is prohibited. You can go slide anywhere down the hill, but do not slide around this area. So they were always afraid that we might be sliding down the hill and shaking all the cherries and then losing the money, because those beautiful red cherries represent money for them. But it was actually my mother. My mother is the one who grew up on the farm, and she used to, during the summertime, actually, she used to be asked to pick the cherries and then deliver them at the local market. And I remember her telling me how that's how she got a chance to go to school, because her dad was able to get extra cash where they could be able to send her to school and get some education. And my mom is one of those few people that actually got a chance to go to school, which was very unusual during her time, because most of the girls would stay home and help at home. But my grandfather was so sure that she absolutely had to send this girl, which was my mother, to school. And in one way to pay for her education and also education of the other siblings was through this extra cash that we're able to get through from coffee, which, of course, I did not get to know the story until later on, when my mom told me this. She said, "It's interesting you're in coffee. By the way, did you know that's how my dad, paid my schooling when I was growing up?" And I had no idea about it. So it was interesting to kind of have to put the two and two together.
Wow, it's amazing. So you grew up more in the city. But your grandfather and your mother had involvement in coffee, and so when you were growing up in the city, what were you kind of hoping to do or aspiring to do in pursuing your studies?
So when I was growing up in the city, actually I went to boarding school too. So I was born and raised in the city. At that time was Bujumbura. But after 10th grade, after the 7th grade, I was sent to a boarding school. So I spent a good amount of time in boarding school, actually. From 7th grade to 10th grade, I was in a boarding school. It was an all-non school, so which was very rigid, very serious education, and also serious discipline. So I would come home during the summertime. At that time. And then during the summertime, one of the things that we used to do as a family, we would go to see my grandparents. So I did spend a lot of time during the summertime visiting my grandparents, which how I was kind of like acquainted with, with the coffee trees, although I did not know exactly what the purpose of those coffee trees that we're not supposed to be around as kids and playing around were for. But growing up in the city, it was just a very different life. And then after my boarding school, actually, I came back to the city to do my other higher, but at that time, it's like from 10th grade to 13th grade, I was at in Bujumbura. That's actually where I went to school. At that time was a mixed school, was, boys and girls, where prior to that it was all girls. And it was just another totally different experience. And I thought I was going to graduate from high school and go to local university like everybody else. But instead, when I graduated, I had an opportunity, a very rare opportunity, to come to the U.S. and voila, and here I am.
Nice. And what was, what was kind of exciting or appealing about going to the U.S.?
It was nerve-wracking for me to come to the U.S. because, first of all, I didn't speak a word of English when I came here, which is quite gutsy to have that decision to go pursue my higher education in a country where I just actually don't speak the local language. So growing up in Burundi, it's a French-speaking country, so we spoke French, and of course I spoke other languages. I spoke the Kirundi and Swahili, which were the local languages. So when I came to the U.S., actually, I had to, refresh and relearn, if I might call it, my English in order for me to be able to go to college and be successful. So it was very scary, because I just kind of didn't know where am I heading to, but I knew I was determined to leave the country and go to school in another place, because I know I would have more opportunities going to overseas to have a higher degree. Most of the people that I was growing up in Burundi will go to Europe. So France and Belgium, as Belgium was a colony of Burundi, was a very typical place that most kids who will have the opportunity that they will go to. But my opportunity at that time was actually quite unique, and I was open. I had an opening opportunity to come to the U.S., and I say I would take it. And I remember my mom looking at me and saying, "What are you thinking? I'm not sure if I should be letting, I don't know if your dad would agree with me to do this." So my father actually had just passed away about a year ago. So it was quite a struggle for my mom to also let me go, because, by letting me go she's letting another help in the family, in the house to let go. But she finally agreed to let me go, and hopefully that was a good choice.
Seems to be. I mean, it's also incredibly brave, that the idea of, it's hard enough already leaving the nest, right? Like even to just go to college locally, like maybe I was like a state away from my family, and the idea to cross an ocean and go to a place that you don't even speak the language, that's incredibly brave, and what a trailblazing move to make. So did you first get your lessons in French, or did you have to learn English first, or how did that work?
So the story is actually, I was accepted to the university. So I came to the university, and then they realized, wait a minute, she doesn't even speak English. So that time, actually, I was in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's the school that I went to for my undergrad. And they said, well, we need to find a place to send her to get her, English, up to speed. So I was actually sent to a place called Red Cloud, Nebraska. It's a small, tiny city bordering actually Kansas state, and in the middle of nowhere, literally just coming from a major city in Burundi, and then ending up in Red Cloud, Nebraska was by itself was a culture shock for me. So it took me 5 months, and once I got there, and I said I have to do this and get out of here as soon as possible. So 5 months, I got my TOEFL, I got my English polished, and got my TOEFL exam taken, and then I was back to UNL to get my undergrad degree.
That's great motivation, right? Like sending you to the middle of nowhere. You're like, I better learn this fast because I gotta get out of here.
Yep.
So you learned English, you go to school, and then from there, you get your MBA from Northwestern, and then you worked in international business for over 20 years. What were you doing exactly?
So actually, I didn't get my MBA immediately, right away. So I finished my undergrad in, Lincoln, Nebraska. Actually, I had 2 degrees. As I say, it's like I got into those places. Same thing with Lincoln, Nebraska. It was a very cold place in the middle of nowhere. So the same thing. And so Red Cloud, Nebraska, I got out of the country and went to the next big city, which was Lincoln, Nebraska. But the same deal, and I say, all right, I got to do this thing and then move on as quickly as possible. So in 3.5 years, I actually managed to get 2 degrees in international business and marketing for the same reason I wanted to get out of there. It was very cold. Burundi is a tropical country. And I say, okay, I don't know what I signed up to, but here I am, and I have to deal with this. So, God help me and figure out how I can get out of this cold as quickly as I can. So I acquired my 2 degrees, but I didn't, God did not have that plan for me. He had a plan for me to actually stay in the state a little longer, because I got a job offer with actually a very major company that was based in outside of Omaha, Nebraska. And they were in telecommunication at that time. So it was a major international company that had a lot of international subsidiaries in French-speaking countries, which is one of the reasons they were very attracted to me, and also with my background in international business. So I ended up by taking a job, and that job took me around the world. I lived in Montreal, Canada, with that company. Then I lived in Vichy, France, as well with that company. Came back, and I started opening up, traveling around the world and opening up international markets for them. So, and this company was actually in wireless telecom, which was in the very early years when telecommunications, specifically wireless, was new in the US and actually around the world. And the company I worked for, they were an engineering company in also a manufacturing company. So we would manufacture the structures, the telecommunication structures that hold the antennas up in the air. So you and I can be able to have the receptions when we travel across country. And that's what I did. And I did it for them for mainly opening international markets around the world. So my job was I was actually head of marketing, international marketing. So I would travel all the way to Eastern European countries before they were even open to the world, and travel to the Middle East. And for somebody who just came back from Burundi just 4 years ago, it was quite an excitement as well, and also just an amazing opportunity. So I got a chance to travel the world in a very early age, in my career, actually literally after I graduated from college. And then it was a few years later that I went to get my executive MBA from Kellogg, and then continue on that trajectory with another actually bigger company at that time. It was Emerson Electric, with the same, it was kind of doing very similar work, opening up market internationally and opening up business. Actually ended up by being a general manager of one of the subsidiary in Troyes, France, when I was pursuing my executive MBA. So speaking about another craziness of doing so many things at the same time. But it has been quite a journey, and I just did not know I'll end up in coffee, because I was so much ingrained in wireless telecom, and the opportunity with coffee landed itself on my plate in a very interesting way.
I'm still curious though, because what an amazing opportunity and experience to have, like you said, at such a young age, and such a great experience, to open international markets. There's so much knowledge gained there. But what kind of motivated you to get that MBA? Did you have other ambitions within the sort of corporate world that you were working?
And actually, what happened with my first company, after working with the company for a few years, I think it was maybe about 6-7 years, I turned around and actually I said, this is great. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I've really enjoyed working for you. I learned a lot. I traveled the world, but I really want to get an MBA. I want to get an MBA. And then at that time, there was a local school I could go to and to pursue my executive MBA, but they say, not yet. So I said, all right, that sounds fine for me, but I'm actually going to realize this is what I want to do. So I actually left the company and started my own consulting business. Myself and a couple of my colleagues, we left and started our own consulting business and helping small companies going global in the same field. And he was doing that consulting status that I was in, or situation I was in, that I had one of the clients who was a subsidiary of Emerson Electric, which is a big company based in St. Louis. You might have heard of them. I did some consulting gig for them for about a year, and they say, you know what? Thank you so much for this amazing work, but now we want you to come to work for us. And I say, well, great. I'll come to work for you, but here's my condition. I need to get my MBA. I need to get my executive MBA. So are you willing to pay for my executive MBA? If you are, I will sign up the dotted line. So they said, you choose whatever you want to go. We will let you go get your executive MBA while you work for us. So that's what happened. So then I left my consulting work, and then I applied to a different school around the country, and I was first accepted in Northwestern, at Kellogg in Northwestern, and I took the opportunity, and I also took the job, and here I am. I just I went on and started working for the company, and they actually gave me a condition that they want me to work for 1 year before I could go and get my MBA, because it was a lot of sacrifice on their end as well to kind of let me do that. But it was really my dream for me. Once I had done with my undergrad, I realized this is great, but I actually wanted to learn more. I was always one of those people who are curious to learn and wanted to grow, and learning has always been something I wanted to do. And so I had an opportunity to actually just having their doors open for me to pursue my executive MBA, and that's what I did. And it was not easy doing it, especially from the fact that I had to travel between Chicago and Paris every other week, for every other weekend, to go to school, and then to go and run their business in Europe, and then come back. But I did it in 2 years, and I will never regret it. It was an amazing experience.
What a great way to use the leverage as well to get your education. But you do strike me as a bit of an overachiever, so I'm not totally surprised.
Scary, scary sometimes.
This is already an interesting journey. So how is it exactly that coffee does come back into your life?
So coffee came back into my life, as I said, kind of like in a very interesting way, and also a way that I did not expect it to come into my life. When I was going to actually Kellogg, getting my executive MBA, I had one of my colleagues who asked me, say, what are you doing here? How come you're not in your country, working in your country, doing stuff for your country? And so I turned around and I look at him and I said, Dan, you have no idea. Do you know that I come from one of the poorest countries in the world? There's nothing to do there. And I just remember during that moment, that was, as I said, I pursuing my executive MBA, and I had I have no vision of going back home. But during the time of working in the corporate world, actually, I lived in San Diego. This is a kind of interesting story. And I remember one day getting up, and I used to have this high-rise condo that was overlooking the bay. I remember getting up one day in the morning and say, there's something wrong with this picture. I come from one of the poorest countries in the world. And here I am, living, the dream of most Americans, overlooking, the ocean. And I said, something is not right with this picture. And anyway, through that experience, I remember, one time going to, there was a local, church that I used to go to. And then through that church, I was invited to go to a retreat, a women retreat. I attend a women retreat, and then during that women retreat, every single woman that they in a circle that was asked what they would, what they wish they would, they have done in their life or what they have accomplished. When they got to me, I said, when I turned 65, I wanted to actually see if I can do something to help my country. And they say, we're not going to wait until you're 65. You got people here in the room who want to help you. What do you want to do for your country? And I said, wow, this is interesting. And I said, you guys have no idea. I come from a very poor country on the planet. And I said, there's so much things that needs to be done in that country. So I remember after that retreat, we got together and then put on a piece of paper 10 things we wanted to do. We had really very big ambition. And at the end of the day, we said we got to narrow this by just a couple things. And then it ended up by being 2 things. And then 2 things, one of the things were just very close to my heart was education. And I said, I'm here sitting with you, talking to you because I had an opportunity of a lifetime. And that opportunity was to go to school and get a higher education. And the second one ended up by being economic empowerment because most people don't have opportunity in Burundi. So out of that meeting, that was back in 2007, we started a nonprofit that back then that's called Burundi Friends International. And it was through the nonprofit that I actually went back to Burundi with my board members. It was like 2010 that I encountered coffee again. Every single place that I would go, I went to USAID and speak to the head of USAID because we were introducing ourselves and talking about the work that we are doing and trying to find partnership. And the guy would turn back to me and he said, you need to be in coffee. This is the time to be in coffee. You need to be in coffee. There's a lot going on in this country. You need to be in coffee. You need to help your people in coffee. I was like, okay, thank you. So, and then literally in that same, visit, a relative of mine came to me and say, Jeanine, I know you live in the U.S. and I know your background is in marketing, and I think you can really help me. I have this great product, this great consumption product called coffee that I've been working with, and I'm trying to find a market. I don't have a way to get to the market. Can you help me? So the 2 and 2 kind of came together. And then I came back home, and then the same person actually reached out to me, and I said, I don't know what you're talking about, but why don't you come here with me? I'm going to take you to this thing called ACAA, and then we're going to find out what if this is viable. So that was 2012. It was actually, I think it was in Portland, and we went to Portland and visited ACAA, the show, talked to people, and I said, I think you have a potential here, but I'm just too busy. I don't have time for this. I'm a consultant in telecommunication, and I run a nonprofit now, and at that time we're actually expecting my 2 little children, and I said, I really don't have any time. And he said, please help me. So I went back home and I spoke to my husband, and then he said, you're out of your mind. How much more can you put on your plate? Something have to give, something has to give, so you're running a nonprofit, you're running a consulting business. We are about to, welcome some kids in the world. And by the way, you have a husband. So which one are you going to drop? So anyway, long story short, I ended up by dropping telecommunication because I have actually been in it, for quite a while. I've had really very long career in telecom, and I felt like, I'm going to do something that I'm just going to go to this show with this kid. I'm helping other people in my country I don't know, and then this relative of mine that really want me to help him. I know he's gone through a lot of tough time, and I kind of want to help him, and I just want to kind of kick back. I'll be just, helping him and taking him to this ACAA thing once a year. So that was the starting of my journey in coffee. And 2 years later, working with him, actually, I helped him to become number one. He won the Cup of Excellence, number one, number three.
Amazing. How many years has Cup of Excellence been in Burundi now?
It's Cup of Excellence in Burundi in 2012. I think the last time they actually had it was 2000. I won't say either 2019 or 2020. They have not been back there yet, but which is very well needed because the country does need some exposure in that way.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's kind of how I stumbled in coffee, and literally thought that it was something I would just do once a year. I traveled to this show and have this kid, and now I producing, exporting, and sitting on the SCA board and doing so many other things. So, like I said,
overachiever. I'm so curious though. So, you had that really interesting and insightful moment when you were in San Diego, and you're looking at your view and you're thinking that, this isn't right. Was the feeling a feeling of guilt, or was it more of a feeling of that you weren't being as purposeful as you wanted to be, or what was it exactly that was kind of striking with you?
To me, it was what struck home was, why am I given this opportunity? Was, both actually. And I actually never thought that, doing something back for my people and back, through the nonprofit was going to be as fulfilling as it was for me. It was actually very fulfilling to the point that the money would never actually bring me the joy that I was able to receive from giving back and helping my own people. And maybe it was a spiritual thing for me when I realized, I am given the opportunity to be here because I am called to do something bigger than what I'm doing right now. And it was actually during that pivotal, that moment where I realized that, there is more to this, and, what can I do, for my people? And so that's kind of how the nonprofit was actually just started. Because when I even shared the story with the people at my church at that time, they were ready to just kind of help me to go do it. They said, don't wait until you're 65, because most of us wait until we're then we miss the opportunity. We're going to help you do this now, which was not an easy thing, kind of looking now. But at that time back then, it was a no-brainer. And I said, I have to do that. And I said, I know it's, I cannot do it all by myself, but I have people that through the other people that we can extend our reach and make a difference. So that feeling about being here, being given the gift to be here, and then realizing that this gift is being given to me because I need to be able to do things for others, and specifically for my people. Because I had a chance to leave. I have a chance to leave at a place that's still a poor country, still one of the poorest countries in the world today. They still have a long way to go. And I was, in my point of view, I was one of those few people that I felt like, this opportunity, I have to use it to fulfill, my goal and my calling here.
Yeah, I always love that line from Paulo Coelho where he says, that the world is conspiring for your success, and it sounds like you kind of had a similar experience where you were getting this inkling, but then all of a sudden, there were other people who were like, yeah, do it, move it forward, push this, and people willing to help you on your journey, which I think is amazing. Your uncle is still in coffee, but is anyone else in your immediate family still working in coffee in Burundi?
Actually, it was my cousin. Yeah, that's he was my cousin. Yeah, I have. Yeah, my brother. Actually, now I have also another sibling of mine who's in coffee, who is also doing some work in coffee. But nobody direct family. It was actually kind of interesting because, as I mentioned, my mom, when she turned to me and tell me about the story that how she grew up in coffee and how she went to school because of coffee, and how really coffee is has done a lot for her and her family. You will not even know in Burundi. So it's because, most people actually do, there's a lot of people who grow coffee in Burundi. And there's a lot of like small holders who just have a handful of trees. I always tell people like the average is like 25 to 50 trees for every farmers in Burundi. So a lot of people actually do, rely on coffee as a crop that provide additional income, to help them to do other things, other than just what they are able to grow and consume themselves. So it's one of those very rare crops that can provide that extra income.
So you have some family connections in coffee, and of course, the way that JNP operates is that you're very involved with the farms that you're working with and the washing stations that you're sourcing your coffee from. So, I mean, I imagine you must feel a lot of pressure to sell the coffee and help bring that income into the producers that you kind of made promises to. How do you manage that? How do you manage that pressure and make good on your promise?
So that pressure is actually very high pressure, and that pressure, this is interesting. You start helping people, then you start, getting involved at a level where you feel like you owe them to do this. Some of my farmers partners, they will literally call me almost like every day just to make sure that I'm still there for them. I almost kind of feel like they call me every day to just make sure, is she still alive? Because if she's not alive, we are done. I have this tremendous responsibility, and also that has kind of been born from just being personally involved with, with the farmers in Burundi, that I cannot give up for them. Sometimes it's wonderful to have that relationship, but sometimes it's also a major, challenge, because, I can tell you, when I get involved with a group of farmers, we end up by buying everything they produce. And because, we're not just there to we teach them, first of all, how to make, good quality coffee. I'm a Q grader and Q processor, as you probably know. And one of my objective is just to make sure that anything that I learn, I'm able to actually, bring it down to them, because they cannot afford to get a Q certification. So my goal is just, how can I share what I learned with them? Not only just how can I share what I learned with them, but in every single year they continue to producing higher quality coffee, and my responsibility is always to try to pay, first of all, pay a high price, and second, give them premium to give them that incentive to continuously producing a high quality coffee. But also on the top of that, I'm not only just going to be buying the top of the coffee that they produce, but I'm also going to also buy everything they produce. And then literally they just, sometimes they just come to me, they say, yeah, great, thanks for all this, wonderful gift and all this great coffee you're buying from us, but what am I going to do with this other one? I have no other place to, to sell it to. You're our sister, you're our mother, you're everything. Please save us. And
no pressure, right? No pressure.
So I end up by sometimes, and my team will actually look at me. They say, "What are you doing?" And I say, "Don't worry. Whoever put me in this situation is going to figure out how to get me out of this situation. So we'll figure out. We'll figure out together." Sometimes because of that relationship, it's just not a pure kind of a profit, business for me. It's also a business where I feel that we can make a lot of difference. We have an opportunity to be able to teach people. We have an opportunity, especially to be able to teach women farmers. We do a lot of work with financial literacy program that have been very successful, but we also, take a lot of risk by buying a lot of coffee. And as I say, sometimes like right now, I have stocks of coffee that I'm trying to move, and I turn around and I say, why did I buy all this coffee? And my team look at me, they say, yeah, why did you buy all this coffee? And I say, because my farmers depend on me and I cannot let them down, because I know if I can't take it, they don't know what to do with it, and they don't have a place to to take it. So instead of having them lose the money, I take it, and then we try to figure out how to move the coffee. So it's a beautiful journey. It's a very fulfilling journey, but it's also, there are a lot of risks that are involved in the process.
Yeah. Does that stress you out? Are you? What do you do with that stress?
Yes, it does. I cannot tell you how many nights that I spent just wondering, how are we going to do this? How are we going to move all this coffee now? There's one stress about, how are we going to get this coffee here, successfully. And then once it gets here, like the situation we're in is now, how do we move this coffee? how do we move this coffee so we can be, ready for the next harvest? And of course, my farmers don't have that stress because I have taken that stress out of the shoulder. Now they're looking at me to say, okay, is she ready to buy our next, harvest coffees? So sometimes I think we have to juggle, but when you get involved in coffee, I think your heart and soul get involved so much sometimes that, it's hard sometimes to balance, but needed.
And I got to imagine that it helps that this isn't the only thing that you do in life, right? Like obviously coffee, this is incredibly important, but then you still have the nonprofit, and you still have your family and your husband, and so you have these different roles, and even participating in the SCA and the places that you volunteer. I'm sure like these are other ways that you can identify yourself and find worth, because I don't know. I mean, I've gone through similar, not on the level that you're going through, but that similar pressure where you obsess about it, right? And you realize that it's not just about making money, it's about actually changing people's lives, and they look at you as a lifeline. And that's an incredible amount of pressure. So being able to sort of diversify where you take energy in from, I think is incredibly important. So I think I'm just impressed. I'm very impressed with what you do and what you're able to do, and that you went from this successful, cushy job to take the leap and become an entrepreneur and sort of blaze a trail that you hadn't seen before you. And I just think that that's amazing. So given your background and, working and having the MBA and all this stuff, what do you see as kind of been the greatest preparation for what you are doing today with your business?
Wow. I have to say that not only my MBA, but really my work experience prepared me to be what I am today. I think I was an entrepreneur at heart, from get-go, actually. I think even when I was a little girl, that's one thing I didn't, touch it. I already had that entrepreneurial spirit. I remember during the summer times where we had no much to do. We had 3 months really during the summer times and nothing to do. Sometimes I felt like nothing to do, although my parents would find a way to get us something to do by just sending all the workers at home. And then we had to figure out how to make the cooking and the cleaning of the house and so forth. But I remember when I was a little girl, actually, I used to make, they call beignets. I used to actually make beignets and then sell them to, in my neighborhood. So at a very early, age, and just don't know what I was going to do with the money. But I just remember making beignets just kind of was a pastime. And then just like make money because I would sell the beignets, to our neighbors. But that, and my mom also was an entrepreneur. She had a business, was a business owner. And I think I kind of got a lot of inspiration, through her. But I really want to really acknowledge that the experience that I had working with Valmont Industry, Emerson Electric, they were both like, big corporations, still are big corporations, gave me a chance to be exposed to some tremendous experience of running businesses that I would never be able to acquire somewhere else. So even that experience, I even took it to in the classroom. The program I did at Kellogg, part of the program was they would not take anybody. You have to have had at least 10 years of management experience to be able to be accepted in the program. And I have to really say that, the blessing of just having that entrepreneurial spirit with me, as well as the experience that I had working in corporate America, running international business and opening market around the world, and as an international marketing manager, and then eventually as a general manager, got me a chance to, get my feet wet before I could get out and start my own. So it was not hard for me to start my own business because I've been there and done that. So that part was easier because I have already acquired the experience that I needed it to be able to be successful.
Amazing. Yeah, you had that experience. You already knew how to enter a new market and break that ground and, kind of be the icebreaker and open in business and internationally as well, which is a huge skill. And you had that initial experience just coming to the US in the first place. So you've always been kind of, breaking the trail in front of you, which is amazing. But how did you get JNP off the ground? I mean, for green companies, financing is normally the largest barrier to entry. So how did you kind of overcome that hurdle and get through the first couple of years?
I think I have not really come that over hurdle even after 10 years in the industry. But the way I actually just really, got into the coffee is literally after you heard, all my experience and years in telecommunication, 20 years, every single penny that I have saved from the retirement, I just put the money into the business. That was the only way to get into it for me. So I had no other ways. I had no parents. I had no parents or friends that will lend me the money. I just had to use what I had learned in my previous careers to get into coffee. So even today, I always tell people it's like, my retirement is sitting in my inventory. So, and that's just the risk, I think, of this business, and then taking business loans. So I think then as you grow, then you expand the business by leveraging by taking business loans. But it's very challenging sometimes when I kind of get up and say, and I'm like, all right, all my investment, all my life, that I have worked so far, it's all sitting in that coffee in the warehouse.
Again, like tremendous risk. I mean, you are a true entrepreneur, and you really put your money where your ideas are. I often wonder, because I do the same thing all the time. And I wonder, it's like a very fine line between an entrepreneur and just a gambling addict, It's like, we'll bet it all in on whatever the pursuit is. I think that's incredible. And it's incredible what you've been able to do. So in that first year, for instance, like how much coffee did you bring in and how much coffee did you sell versus where are you guys today?
Back then, I wanted to bring actually coffee that we already knew that we had, clients for. And then as we start growing, then we start taking position where we could actually have, spot coffee, because we would, at the end of the day, we actually have people who come to us and say, do you have anything? We didn't book ahead of time. Do you have anything for us? So it's that balance about, forward contracting and also having some spot coffee to be able to offer to new clients, or even some who might be running out, to be able to fulfill that need. That's end up by being a combination of both. So yeah, and in the beginning, we could also bring so much because we had so much to be able to afford to bring in. And then as you grow, then you end up by having more position that people can tap into.
About how many containers a year are you bringing in for JNP presently?
Wow, that's a very good question. Quite a number of coffees. Quite a number of, we have plenty, let's put it this way, we have plenty of coffee for anyone who is interested to support our mission and our work in Burundi. So, we have, we do pallets, wise in terms of coffees to some people who want, full container. We can also fulfill that full container need. So, and actually, the other thing also, we also have coffee now in the US, also have coffees in Europe. So we have coffee in different continents as well. So, but yeah, we are, we have grown, for just a handful of a few bags to now moving, container wise of micro lots.
I didn't realize that you had gone international as well. So that's cool to hear that you're also in Europe.
Yes, absolutely. I had to. I mean, I'm already, I'm international by default. So yeah, we are doing work in Middle East, Europe, and the US, and a little bit of Asia. So yeah, we're now in the US. JNP Coffee is definitely a very strong global company.
And I know you have the volume because you had that nice deal with Pete's Coffee, and they're not going to source if they don't feel like they can get enough volume out of you.
That's correct. That is very correct.
What would you say is your greatest success with the company so far?
My greatest success is actually really the relationship that I was able to have, that I'm still having with the people of Burundi. The fact that I was able to pivot this and go back in Burundi. I mean, I actually thought when I came to the US that I had escaped the poverty, that, I was done and I was going to live, a life of, free of poverty. But I'm actually back and working with my people. And that's, to me, that is the greatest accomplishment that I want to say that I have ever thought I would be able to, to get to. I had no desire or interest to go back in Burundi, but here I am. Everything I do is about Burundi. Everything I do is about working with farmers in Burundi. It's about touching the lives of. There is no more fulfillment in life for me than that part. So it's enjoyable. It's also very challenging and stressful at some points and some time because of just navigating and working in that environment is not always easy because of just the fact that it's a poor country. But it's extremely fulfilling for me. And that's what keeps me going. And just knowing that, I have given a chance to be where I am and I can give back by being able to touch others and bringing others where they cannot be able to receive because they don't have a chance to leave the country like I had a chance to leave the country.
And is there a specific challenge or issue that you're dealing with right now?
Yeah, I have a lot of coffee that I need to move. If you have any roasters who are looking for great, amazing Burundi coffee, not only just great, amazing Burundi coffee, but coffee with a very strong purpose and mission and making a difference in lives of the farmers and with some amazing social impact, have them give me a call.
That's what I think is amazing is, what you've created is truly purpose-driven coffee, and it couldn't be more authentic. I mean, the fact that, you're betting your retirement on it, that says an incredible amount about your commitment, both to Burundi, but also to your business and to your family. I think that's incredible. And so this is a product that people should be able to get behind pretty easily. And because you're buying, all the coffee, then it means you have all degrees of quality as well. So people can find stuff that are going to be good for blends, or they can find stuff that's going to be good for micro lots, and it's going to be like kind of the highlight coffees. So there's definitely a lot to choose from, and of course it has that beautiful Burundi East African flavor with like some bright, beautiful acidity, but nice body. Again, this coffee that I got from Joe is very good. I enjoyed it very much. I had it on its own. I only drink my coffee with no milk, so it's like a purist, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. So I think that's great. And also you have this new project that you're doing, which is JNP Coffee going on tour. So you have the coffees going to different cities, and what's that program exactly? Are you guys like cupping coffees with different roasters, or how's that work?
Yes, yeah, it's actually an amazing program. A friend of mine, Sherry Jones, actually reached out to me. She's an icon in the industry. If you might not know her, you might want to check her out. But she's actually one of the rare judge women. I met her at the Cup of Excellence in Burundi. She was the head judge in 2015, and at that time I was an observer on the jury, and we worked together. And I've known her since then. But she actually reached out to me and she said, "Hey, I love Burundi, and it's one of my favorite place, and people and the coffees, and I have an interest to actually continue still doing some work in Burundi. Do you think we can do something together?" And then we came up with this idea about taking the coffee on the road, the Burundi coffee on the road. And as you probably know, Burundi is still a very small country, unknown, compared to the other East African, countries, and that produce, in my point of view, some of the most exceptional coffee. But most people don't even know what Burundi is, let alone that knowing that it produces some amazing coffee. So anyway, Sherry and I just came up with this idea to just take it on the road. So take it on the summer road. So we've actually have had some amazing time of going from city to city. We start with the East Coast. We are going to be in the middle of the country next week. And then we're going to be on the West Coast next week, and we are just organizing some cuppings and inviting everybody and anybody who can join us, but hopefully roasters who want to be exposed to some amazing East African coffees and come to the table and taste the coffees and hopefully buy some coffee. So it has been an interesting idea and also adventure and costly.
Sure, of course. Are you planning on heading back to Red Cloud to do some cupping?
Yeah, that would be great. I am actually going to Coffee Space. I'm going to be going to Red Cloud. I'm going to be in Kansas City. And I was just actually thinking about that. I'm like, oh man, I'll be very close to Red Cloud. So I'll be heading to Kansas City. That's actually my next trip is in Kansas City. Yeah.
That's great. And are you going there personally as well?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Kansas City is actually pretty fun and has a really developed coffee scene there, which was surprising to me. But it's also not far from Topeka, which is where PT's coffee is. I don't know if you've ever met with PT's, but they are great great fans, first of all, of like direct trade, but also more purpose-driven coffees. I'm friends with Jeff and the guys over there. So if you haven't already met with them, that might be a good place I could introduce you to as well.
Well, thank you. I know them very well. I actually used to live in San Diego. As you probably know, they have acquired a company in San Diego.
Yeah.
I'm very so yes, I do know Jeff. Yes. Yeah.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, I think that sounds like a great program, and it's such a good idea. I think that that's a great idea. You know, the more in-person cuppings that we can get involved in, I think people are still really longing for that idea. Are you planning on integrating the new SCA cupping form into the process, or are you still going old school?
Actually, you'll be surprised. I think I was probably one of the first people to introduce the new cupping form in Burundi. I was in Burundi. Well, you probably know we have a lab, which is something we didn't talk about. But I have a staff here, but I also have a bigger staff in Burundi at Origin, because that's where we do most of the work. And so we have a cupping lab in Burundi, and I was able to introduce the new form, the value assessment form in Burundi in May, with the help of Chris Corman. He actually came for a visit, and I said, Chris, let's do this. We'll go. Yeah, let's. I know you're a great instructor. Let's take a shot at this and see if we can get our people to be exposed to these new forms and see what the reaction is to it. And so we did it. We did it in my own country and in Origin, and my own lab in Burundi. And the reception was, mixed, which is expected because anything that's new. But I'm actually very excited about the form, because for me, it's actually very easier and a little more straightforward. It might kind of look, daunting from a lot of people at the beginning, which is normal. And we're all still learning about, a few things, because I'm like, what is the numbers? I cannot add things up. So, but yeah, I got a chance to, try it out the first time this summer.
Very cool. I know that a lot of the objective behind it is to give an opportunity for people to sort of interject even a little bit of their own subjective value to the coffee. So beyond the objective part, which is whether it's sweet and acidic and all these things, you can add the kind of subjective, like how you feel about the coffee and what maybe an additional value add is there. Do you find that to be useful and helpful?
Absolutely. So I think kind of the same thing that we talked about, earlier, where my farmers depend on me and they call me and I know who they are. And I feel like I have the obligation to make sure that, they can continue growing and growing. It's very similar, in coffees. I think that, sometimes I might, cup some amazing coffees on a table, but at the end of the day, I might end up by choosing one coffee specifically because, like in this case, it's a woman coffee, and I know the work and the sweat and the challenge that they are going through. I can see people in the coffees, so it's always, we always, cut blind, but I can always tell you what this coffee belongs to X, Y, and Z. Sometimes I get some surprise, but there is also that who is behind the work. That's also, how much work are they putting into it, that I'm very aware. That also might make me make decisions, one way or the other, because of the relationship that I have with those farmers, or because of the work that I know with, going on there, or the help that they might need specifically. So yeah, there's a lot of that going on, and then you have a chance to really use that on, with the new forms.
I think it's a great idea. And the idea is to be able to match people with the coffees that they're looking for. So that way the value we're assigning is matching up with the person who values those things, which I think kind of levels the playing field a bit. Now, over the years, you've done a great job of marketing yourself and JNP Coffee, and basically it seems like everybody I know knows who you are. So that's a good accomplishment. You're always speaking, you're volunteering at all these places. So people know who you are and they know the quality of what you're doing. What do you think is that? What's kind of the obstacle that is holding back some of the sales? You said you had a lot of coffee that you need to sell, and maybe that's an obstacle right now. What do you think is kind of what's causing that obstacle?
And very specifically, for in our situation, is like the lack of knowledge of the place. Most people don't know what Burundi is. Most people still don't know Burundi is a producing country, a coffee producing country, and a specialty, producing country. I think it's funny because I've been in this industry and this business for over 10 years now. And then I thought, I'm like, by now, everybody would know what Burundi coffee is all about. But, I still encounter people who have never tasted Burundi coffee, or yet people who actually have know about Burundi coffee, taste Burundi coffee, but cannot find the Burundi coffee. We cannot find this coffee. Where can we find this coffee? So there's a number of different factors that actually I think that plays, in this challenge, is the knowledge of the place, also where to find it. That's kind of still not always straightforward, for most roasters, and also be able to find somebody reliable to get the coffee from. Sometimes people have relationship with a producer, and then something happens, and that producer, run away. You can never see them again. So there is also that challenge that people want to be able to find who they can rely on, they can trust that they are all going to be there for them tomorrow. If something goes wrong, they can back them up. So there is I think a lot of that still out there. That cause barrier in my point of view, and of course, like everybody else, a lot of people are long in this market right now. So we have excess of coffee on the in the marketplace globally, just in general.
Right, that's fair. And, maybe also the flavor profile. If they don't know where the country is, they likely don't know what the flavor profile is and whether that's desirable and how that's going to fit into how they're blending. So I think that's part of what's great about the cupping tour that you're taking, is so people understand that. One of the things I notice, like that, especially with emerging origins or origins that people are not as used to, is they don't know how to use it. So one of the things that I like to do is sort of not just cup with people, but also make a blend with it, and show them like, this is how it can work in a blend. This is how it can work on its own. Because ultimately, to do volume, you want to be in that blend, right? Because that's where they're going to be buying more than 1 to 5 bags. That's when you're getting the 25 to 50 orders. And so the better that you can sort of help them with, is it going to be a pour over? Is it filter? How can it work in an espresso? These type of things. I find that to be really helpful. And let's just get it out of the air right now. I'm going to wing it. Burundi, of course, is south of Rwanda and shares the border with Rwanda, but I think it also touches Congo on the west, and it touches Tanzania on the east. The southern border is Zambia. Okay.
Yeah.
So because you're connected to Tanzania, then that's where you're going to be exporting from, right? So just so we can paint a picture for people right now, that's where you're located. It's a small country, kind of again maybe is slightly bigger than Rwanda, and has a lot of mountains, high elevations. So you get these really nice acidic flavors, but there's also a lot of sweetness. Because what are the primary varietals that are growing there?
Yeah. So first of all, I have to tell you that it's not until I went back to Burundi and realized how stunning and beautiful the country is, because, and I remember just going back home, and I'm in the city of Bujumbura, where I'm from, and I look around me, it's all mountains. It's just all mountains. So coffee grows, a lot of things that grow in Burundi grow in a very, very high elevation, because we are very lucky to have these beautiful high mountains that go up to, 2,000, meters above sea level, which is pretty high. And because of that, and then also the volcanic soil, we have volcanic soil in Burundi, just the quality of the coffee, I call this sparkling acidity of you find in Burundi coffee, and the floral and the fruitness and then the body, all that together just are able to produce something just like the amazing profile that most people are looking for. And then not mentioning about some chocolate notes, it depends where you are in the country. Some of them I have more the lemon, as the side of the taste, with the other part of the country, like the central, might have more the chocolates, spicy notes. So you get everything. I kind of feel like you can get, I get what I call the mini terroir in Burundi, because of just the varietal that just presents with the structure and the topography of the country in general. So you get to have like a lot, but also Burundi is a landlocked country. Like you said, it's the size of Maryland State. It's about the same size as Rwanda. And most people don't know the country. Don't know that actually, because of all the condition of the rain as well. I mentioned about the volcanic soil, the high altitude, the rain, and the shade. Just a lot of the coffees in Burundi are grown under within other plantations, so you get a lot of shade as well in general. all of that put together just are able to produce some amazing, cup profile that people can use in different applications. Like you said, you mentioned about blends, but our coffee just is amazing on espresso. I had somebody who called me the other day who's used to, using a lot of Ethiopian coffee. He said, I had no idea. I said, you sent me the sample that you sent me. I put, I had some gas and I put an espresso and I serve it, as an espresso drink to my guests, and we were blown away. And I said, yes. And by the way, do you have any other coffee you're trying to, give some life to? Use it as a blend, some of that coffee and see what you might be able to get out of it. So
yeah, give it a little lift. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it's really provide that diversity and also of application for menus, for roasters, not only just like pour overs, espresso, but also can also be thrown as a blend. It's really a coffee that can just, that gives, like it really is able to give a lot. Not only, we are doing a lot of giving with the coffee, but the coffee itself can give you a lot if you give it a chance, just in general. So what was your question again?
I didn't really have one. I just was. I wanted to chime in on the issue that you were dealing with, and just get it out there. That like, okay, if the problem is people don't know where it is, let's talk about that. It's probably exporting out of Dar es Salaam, I imagine, would be the closest.
Yes.
And
in Mombasa. So it's it's in Mombasa. So coffee can go from it's a landlocked country, like you said, just like Congo and Rwanda and Uganda. So we are all landlocked countries, and the only way that we can get out is through the port of Tanzania. And there are two main ports, two major ports. One is Dar es Salaam, and the other one is Mombasa, where we can actually be able to get the coffee out of. So it's not easy. It's actually one of the hardest part is actually not to get the coffee on the water. One of the hardest part is just to actually get the coffee out of the country.
Yeah, the trucking.
Yes. And so because of that, that also brings another barrier. And then also the other challenge is in Burundi, unless you can pay the coffee before it leaves the country, you cannot get the paperwork to export the coffee. So most people cannot even buy coffee because they don't have the opportunity to actually be able to buy it FOB. They have to, there's this, constraints that's, being regulation that provides some constraints that you have to be, purchased from the country. And a lot of people, unless you know what you're doing, it's very risky. So there is all those other constraints you mentioned earlier. That's another thing that I was going to mention to you. One of the new program we are, bringing forward, we are going to be providing services to others who want to consolidate coffee with us, and we are going to be providing that service of consolidation. So anybody in the region who want to consolidate, want to bring coffee, have a direct relationship with a producer or a roaster, we are going to be there to facilitate that process to get the coffee to people around the world who are dealing with small farmers or dealing with small quantity that they're not able to move right now.
I think that's brilliant. It's a great way to diversify a little bit the business and offset some of the risk, because you've obviously already got the logistics under control and the relationships. So maybe for people who don't have that link in the value chain, you're able to plug that in and make sure that it's going to work well on the producer side as well. So I think that's great. I'm going to switch gears on you for a minute. In addition to all these other things that you're doing, you're married, you have children. How do you manage the balance? I mean, you're so active with the SCA and the International Women's Coffee Alliance and all the other things that you're volunteering for. How do you strike that balance and still have time for your family life?
It's very challenging. I think that I love to work and I love what I do, and that kind of brings that energy in me. You mentioned earlier, it's like, where do I get the energy? I think the balance for me actually, and also a lot of stress. That also brings a lot of stress along the way. But I have an incredible supportive husband, and I don't think that if I didn't have that behind me, I would not be able to do what I do. So he understands who I am, and he understands what my mission in the world is, and he's very supportive. Even my kids, they know that every single time anywhere that we travel, oh my gosh, she's going to stop to another coffee place. So, I think that the balance, you have to strike the balance. Otherwise, you run into trouble. But that striking that balance is not always easy. But I think it starts with having the support in the family. As I say, for me, it's the support of my husband, and also our kids are a little older right now that they can, come along and go along with mommy, and they know mommy is in coffee, and they know mommy is helping all these people in coffee in Burundi, and they want to also be able to do that one day. But I get up in the morning. The first thing that I do after coffee, I go to the gym. That's one of my first, balance in my life. If I don't have that, I cannot sustain all the stress and challenges every day. But once I have that, bring it on to me. I'm ready to go. So that's kind of how I, and then, on the weekends, I do spend some time with my family. We're always doing fun things, and summer being the summer, it's also when my kids are off school, and I usually try to find some time when we can go and do some fun things. So it's not all about work. And I'm also a lover of food, so I cook and clean every night. So almost everybody that I know who's a professional and a woman in any leadership, they always look at me to say, "How can you do that?" And I say, "I don't know, but I do it." And that's part of balancing life, because it's not all about work. It's also about serving my family and taking care of my family. So
you're an overachiever at home as well.
I'll give you my husband's number. You can ask him.
That's great. So we're always, kind of interacting, and when we have like calls here and there, and I always see you at events. And last time we talked, we were at the SCA show in Portland, and you had mentioned to me, you listened to the podcast, but you also had said, you need more women guests on the show. And I was like, yes. Totally, shots fired, I get it. And, the thing is that I had been thinking the same thing, and I'd been trying to get some people, but I wasn't able to always book the people that I wanted. But just having you say that, resonated with me. And I was like, oh, wow. So it's not just me, but everybody notices. So I really appreciate you bringing it up to me and not being afraid to share something with me, because I just really appreciate that bit of advice. And I don't know if you listened to the last episode, but I actually have a new co-host who's Andy Trindle-Mersch from Phil's Coffee. So now every episode has female voice on there as well. So, and that's definitely thanks to you. So appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you. You say hello to her. That's incredible. Maybe we'll get to have an interview together with her. That's incredible. That's amazing.
Very cool.
Kudos to you.
Yeah, thanks. And I love this relationship because we've always had kind of a back and forth, like I feel like you were never afraid to ask me for some advice or ideas, and then you're always quick to come back the same way. So I just want you to know I really value this relationship, and I love that interaction because there's so few people that give me feedback and ideas, and so I just love this.
Oh, thank you. I do too, Jake. And then if there's anything I can do for you as well, always know that I'm here. I'm always lending too many hands and too much of myself, but it is a pleasure for me to do what I do. And anything I can do back for you as well, please do not hesitate. I'm here for you as well. So thank you again for the opportunity and to share this with you, and and to share with the world and see what we're going to be next.
We'll see where this takes us, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Jeanine. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jeanine. I appreciate it. Great to see you.
Stay well and stay cool.
Always.
All right. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye.
If you like what you heard, please subscribe to wherever you listen to your podcasts. A very special thanks to our guest,
Jeanine Niyonzima-Aroian.
Thanks as always for your support and listening. Please feel free to share this with a friend and get more people to listen. Always love to hear feedback and interesting ideas. If you have a guest that you think would be perfect for our show and you'd like to hear interviewed, please feel free to hit us up at info@fnbtherapy.com. Thanks and take care.